Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kelsey and I'm here today to do my favorite time of the month. It's the it's the Lost Heroes read-along. So if you watched any of my videos in the past year, you'll know that me and my sweet little angel baby Haunani have been going through the Percy Jackson series, but also last month we started the Heroes of Olympus. Last month we read the first book, The Lost Heroes, so this month we're reading The Son of Neptune. Our reading sprints start in about 15 minutes, so I'm very excited. My goal is to read this all in one day. If you don't know what the Percy Jackson series is about, it followed a young kid named Percy Jackson as he discovered Camp Half-Blood and how there are some children in the world that are born of god parents, Percy being one of them. But in the Heroes of Olympus series, the scope of the amount of kids that have parents has increased. So in the first book we met Jason, Piper, and Leo. I cannot forget Leo, my little angel, as they kind of uncovered Camp Half-Blood for themselves, but also that Jason has something going on. We discovered that Jason is the son of Jupiter, which is the Roman version of Zeus. So when Zeus went with Jason's mom, he was his Roman iteration, and that creates a different types of kids. So in the Son of Neptune, already I could tell you, the first person that we'll be following is Percy. I don't think Percy remembers anything. Then there's two new characters on the back, Hazel and Frank. So I don't know who they are, but I have a feeling, given the way that the Lost Hero ended and that Jason, Piper, Annabeth, and Leo were on their way to the Roman camp, I feel like Hazel and Frank are probably characters from the Roman iterations of these gods, right? So my goal today is to finish it all in the one day because tomorrow is the thrillathon. By the time you see this, thrillathon will already be happening. It's a readathon that I co-host. It's 2 years now with my friends from the Citadel. So you'll probably have seen that announcement video and you'll probably see a vlog coming right after this one. But because it starts tomorrow, I don't want to have this on my conscience tomorrow. So the goal really for the sprints is to hopefully get about halfway, take a break, and read the last half tonight. I have tomorrow off as well, so if I need to stay up late and really finish this, I will. So that's the update for right now. I'm going to log in, I'm going to set up StreamYard, and hopefully we'll have some fun sprints.
Hello.
All around me are familiar faces, worn out.
But at least all today because thrillathon starts tomorrow. So I don't want
Tomorrow?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's tomorrow. So I don't want to bring in this book into our spooky week.
Why? And then, we're planning thrillathon and stuff, and I was like, I literally cannot do this. I know. I That's a nice sound.
I love that. That was so pleasant. I'll probably not go for as long alone because obviously I'm just not as entertaining and funny as you. So it's like where's my jokester,
Am I the jokester?
I feel like I bounce off of your energy, so
My chaotic energy.
yeah. I'm so hungover today.
Yeah.
And as I was reading this before, I was like,
yeah.
And so I had to FaceTime my boyfriend who's literally on the other side of this wall.
Uh-huh.
I was like, babe, please give me coffee. He's like, okay.
I'm done. I have a busy day tomorrow.
Responsible.
I went to bed at 10 and my sleep was terrible. And so I'm just like,
I'm the opposite of you. I went to bed at 4 in the morning.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah, and you're in bed and you're like, you stupid bitch.
I know.
Tomorrow morning, you're gonna hate yourself. Okay, so I wasn't gonna update until I got to the 100-page mark, but on page 60, what ended up happening is that Nico D'Angelo appeared. So basically, from what I've read so far, Percy has no memory, much like Jason at the beginning of the first book, and Percy finds himself at the Roman camp, much like Jason finding himself at the Greek camp, right? So Percy's learning a bunch of things about the Roman camp and the Roman kids, and so to his impression, he is the son of Neptune, which is the Roman name of Poseidon. I think what's really interesting is that as he's there, the Roman ghost gods are calling him like gracias or Grecius, which is basically Greek. They're calling him Greek. Everything he knows is Greek. He brings up how like the kids should be divided by their parents, and Hazel is kind of like, why would we be divided by our parents? Which I thought was like really cute, obviously because Percy remembers it from Camp Half-Blood, and at Camp Jupiter they're divided by like their strengths, from what I understand, and they're very like war like, and I don't know enough history to know if that's like specific to Roman ideology, that Romans were very war centric. It's potentially that, so I think that that was really interesting. But Hazel's like, okay, like blah blah blah, this and that, this is the camp, blah 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 blah, blah. Come meet my brother. And so Percy's like, okay, chill, let's go meet your brother. And then it's Nico D'Angelo, and I'm so excited. I was wondering when we were gonna meet him, when we were gonna see him, and I'm super happy about it. The first 60 pages of the book was Percy's chapters. So now we're moving into Hazel, and I feel like Nico's gonna be more involved in these chapters, and I'm very excited to see where his story goes, because like I said in my previous vlog that I think Nico's gonna have a bigger role because he is of Italian heritage, and that was specific to him in the Percy Jackson series. And because this series is following Roman demigods, right, I feel like he's gonna have a much bigger role potentially, and a role of blending the both sides, much like Jason and Percy are doing, where they're kind of on both teams so far. So I have a feeling that this is happening at the same time as The Lost Hero. So that's why we're seeing sort of like repetitive nature, but we're also learning a bit more about the Roman side of things, which I think was interestingly done by Rick Riordan, because obviously kids who might not have remembered what happened in the Percy Jackson series, or if you hadn't had read them like as closely as I have, obviously, might have forgotten the importance of like Camp Half-Blood and what was going on there, the prophecies, those major figures in the book. So we focus on that in the first book, and then we're starting to move more into the Roman side of things, but having a character like Percy that kids care about to integrate both stories now. So I think that's really well done, at least on Rick Riordan's part. So I'm gonna continue reading, but yeah, obviously super excited that Nico's here. Exactly who I'm talking about.
Ooh.
I was very excited.
Yeah.
Sorry, new favorite character?
Frankie boy.
Frankie. It's a goal. It's happening.
Okay, you got it. Thank you. I'll see you later. Bye.
Bye. Enjoy. And then there was one. Hello, I'm coming at you several hours later at the 200 page mark. So I'm not as far as I wanted to be by 8 o'clock, but I think we could still get this done, hopefully. And yeah, I needed to sleep. I needed to nap. I'm so hungover that I just had to take an hour and a half nap. So that's what happened. That's why we're here right now. But yes, I did get to page 200, and there's been a lot of revelations about like Frank and Hazel's history. And what I'm really appreciating about the Heroes of Olympus series, and I think I said this in the last book, in my last vlog, that I really like the in-depth character backgrounds that we're getting for each individual main character in the series. So in this one, we've discovered that Hazel is actually from the 1940s, and she's the daughter of Marie Laveau, I think, and she was the voodoo queen in New Orleans in the 1940s. So I think that that was a really interesting addition. Once again, we're playing with time, and we're playing with a very specific time period that Hades, or in this case, his Roman counterpart Pluto, of him having children around this time during World War II. I think that that's really interesting. I'm not sure if it's going to come into play, but just like an interesting like fact about Hades as a character, I guess. I just thought of, as I'm editing this vlog, weren't Bianca and Nico running from someone, and that's why Hades hid them in the casino? Someone talk to me about this, because could it be that that's why Hades was saying like, I can't protect you if you go to Alaska, because it's like the land without the gods and all of that stuff? Are Hades' children being attacked specifically, or being used for some reason? Because Hazel was used, right, to like grow this giant, right, Gaia's son. Are Hades' children mega important to developing the like evil side? And that's why Hades is like, I don't know, I have to like protect them. I'm fascinated by this, and if anybody knows, please tell me. I think I'm correct. I think I'm correct, and I can't wait to see if I am as the series goes on. So. And then we also get a lot of stuff on Frank. So Frank is actually from Canada. So we get some info on him and how he is the son of Aries/Mars. And he doesn't really want to be, he doesn't identify with like this like really tough warlike aesthetic. He really wanted to be like an archer and be like Apollo. And when you look at flashbacks of him communicating with his grandmother, you really see that she values like this warriorness, and his mom was also a warrior, the woman obviously who fell in love with Mars. And so I think that that's really interesting to have that background being explained about Frank, because so far he's been such a like sweet and understanding boy, and definitely not what is expected of children of Mars, especially from what we know of Aries' children, like Clarice and all of them, where they were quite like angry, tough, aggressive, and like Frank is none of those things. So I think that that's really interesting. So far so good. Like I said, I think the historical aspect, the background aspect is what I'm enjoying the most of the novel. Percy's story is very similar to Jason's, so I can't really say anything because I just feel like it's the same thing. Whereas like in the first book, Jason, it was like Roman words and stuff like that, and people were like, huh, what are you? And now in this book, it's like, sorry, the Greek demigods don't exist anymore, Percy, so we don't know who you are. It's a very similar projection of the story, so I'm curious to see if it will be different from Jason's story and how they will come to meet one another. Annabeth and Grover are still looking for him. Percy does have like he still has the connection to Grover. So there's one instant that I just passed where Percy gets a message from Grover being like, we're coming to save you, blah, blah, blah. But he just doesn't know who they are, you know? Right now, I would say we're about halfway through the book. So we'll see how much further we can get before I feel like updating and seeing where that goes. Hello, so I wanted to give an update that I have about 200 pages left. I'm on page 362 and the book ends at 520. So I have less than 200 pages left, it seems. I think I could do it. I'm pretty freaking proud of myself. I've read quite a bit. So where we're at this point, Percy, Hazel, and Frank are now tasked to go to Alaska to save, I think, one of the like minor gods who controls death and the people who die and who stays. And that was a problem that Jason was dealing with in the last book, right? Where the people who were supposed to be dead were coming back to life, right? So there's characters like that in this book where they're supposed to be dead and they're not. And when they die, they come back to life again. So once again, we're dealing with that plot while at the same time, Percy is starting to remember things and it's starting to become more and more clear that he is of like a Greek descent, and Hazel is starting to piece things together where she's slowly realizing that perhaps there is another camp, and Percy's starting to remember things that have happened during the Percy Jackson series specifically, and what he did during that time. At this point right now, the characters have made it to Canada. I'm really enjoying these Canadian references in the last two books. In the last book, they were in my province. In this book, they're in Vancouver, so I think that that's really interesting. And like I mentioned in the last vlog, I'm enjoying that because I'm enjoying these different aspects of the world that Rick Riordan is adding to the novel, whereas with the Percy Jackson series, it was solely in what felt like New York. So I'm excited to see where we go from here. At this point right now, Frank is discovering his backstory. Like I told you last time, he's still slowly learning things about himself. They go to Vancouver because that is where Frank is from, and they had to save his grandmother. So I'm guessing there's gonna be a very emotional scene. It's the scene I just stopped at where his grandmother is in bed and Aries/Mars is waiting for him to basically tell him like, your grandmother's been waiting for you. So I stopped there just to give myself a little bit of a breather because I have been reading this nonstop, and I'm very keen to see how this is going to end. I do think it's going to end and tying it together with the ending of the Heroes of Olympus. I do think these books are happening pretty much at the same time, so I'm excited to see how they kind of connect, or if they connect in the next book, which I think is the Mark of Athena. Yeah, the Mark of Athena. So I think that that's where the story is going to like take off at the same time. So I'm interested to see how they tie together in this one. Because I'm reading this all at once, I'm wondering if this vlog has been interesting at all, because there's less breaks in between, because I'm really like, let me get this done literally in 24 hours. Hello, so I have now made it to the bed. I have 100 pages left, and it's getting really exciting because they've made it to Alaska. Percy Jackson has retrieved some of his memories. So he's remembering things, he remembers where he's been, he remembers Annabeth and some of his life before and like the monsters that he's like battled with and whatever. And they have about 24 hours until the festival Fortuna starts, and that's when the Camp Jupiter is going to be attacked by like giants and cyclopses and stuff like that. So we're getting to the really nitty gritty of it. They're in Alaska. They have to defeat some sort of giant, and then I'm hoping that they meet up with Annabeth and Jason at the end of the book, and then we're gonna see how that will start and relate to the Mark of Athena. I forgot to mention this, but they had like became friendly with like a harpy, and the harpy is really good at like reading things and remembering things. I think she's really cute. I think she's like one of the better characters in the book, and she keeps mentioning this prophecy about how the daughter of wisdom, so that's the Mark of Athena, that's Annabeth, and then something about a son of Neptune drowning. So that could be Percy, obviously, or it can even be Frank, because we learned that on Frank's dad's side, they are legacies, or what are called legacies, of Greek gods, in some sort, and they're like descendants of descendants of descendants. So they're not necessarily like the child of a god, but they still like count as demigods. So he has it on both sides, which I think is really interesting, and something that I thought was going to be brought up with Piper in the first book. That was one of my theories, that there were going to be different mythologies integrated into the books, and so I think that Frank as a legacy works for something, and I'm excited to see if my theory is therefore correct with Piper. And also I do wanted to say, I did say that Hazel was the daughter of the voodoo queen Mary Laveau, but in this book it's Mary Levesque. So that's why Hazel's last name is Levesque, and I did look it up because I was curious, and she is based off of Marie Laveau, even though it's not technically that character. But I just thought that was interesting and a little like plus for the history nerds, you know. It is currently 11:17. I think I can finish this book, and maybe I won't update you tonight, but I'll definitely update tomorrow before I start the thrillathon stuff. Hello, welcome to the end of the vlog. Please ignore these eye bags. I don't know what's happening. I'm exhausted, but I did manage to finish The Son of Neptune last night. I read 500 pages in one day. Pretty proud of myself, but we'll get into my final review of the novel. So I ended up giving this book 4 stars. I think it was an improvement from The Lost Hero. So I really enjoy where the series is going. I think that's pretty obvious. I do think that this one was, like I said, a bit of an improvement of the last one, because we already know what's going on with the camps. So we can focus more on the characters and what they're doing and their development over the mystery, because we already kind of understand what's going on, and this book is just working to fill in those gaps. I was really happy to be reading from Percy's perspective again. I just find him to be really charming, really snarky, and I think that that's something that's missing from Jason's character. But again, and I think and I hope that this discussion will be brought up in the books, the difference between the Camp Jupiter and Camp Half-Blood. Obviously, Camp Half-Blood, a lot of different personalities. The children are kind of taught to embrace their differences, whereas with Camp Jupiter, the Roman way of thinking, they're very much war-centric, power-centric, and that is reflected in their personalities, or the personalities that they tried to like tone down. However, I would say that the two characters in this book, Hazel and Frank, were a lot more interesting than Piper and Jason, and I think that has to do also with their interesting perspectives and the different backgrounds that they have, particularly Hazel. I really enjoyed her background, her history. I think that was really interesting, and a cool addition to the story, because we already had that with Nico a little bit in the Percy Jackson series. So I think having Hazel there adds this element of what is going on with Hades, Pluto. Why does this keep happening to him, that he keeps having children from the past come back? So I hope that that's discussed. I think that that could be really interesting, particularly because I really like Nico, obviously, and you saw when he appeared in this book, I was super excited. And I think Nico's going to have a really important part in the next few books, so that excites me a lot too, because I've been eagerly anticipating his arrival. Related to that, apart from the addition of the Roman mythology, I'm really interested in these different backgrounds and histories that are happening. Like I said in the previous clip, Frank is a legacy, and this has something to do with the being descendants rather than just a son or daughter of the gods. So I think that that's going to really come into play, because why would they mention it so randomly? So I really like that aspect. I hope that that's going to be important and have some like interesting developments within the novels. I also really enjoyed the antagonists in this one, but particularly in the series in general. I just feel like they're a lot more sinister and they have bigger plans underneath the surface. And I'm not just talking about like the larger antagonists, it's also like the minor characters that I feel like are slightly evil. I don't know. I'm interested to see where those aspects are going. And much like with a lot of Riordan's books, I really enjoyed the cliffhanger ending in here. And now that these two books are finished, we're we're opening up the characters, where we're opening up the overall plot. The next book I'm really hoping and I think is where they come together and the prophecy of the seven starts to begin. I do, however, want to talk about a slight issue with this book that I have. I think it's important that we discuss these issues with middle grades, no matter how old these books are. I think that it's important just to bring this up so that we acknowledge when things might be slightly weird or problematic. So I do have a slight issue with Camp Jupiter's way of thinking, specifically with the fact that it glorifies war and power, and that it's kind of teaching these children to be better than others. And the camps are also divided on the basis of their gods and how worthy their gods are. And this is explained because Roman civilization took what Greek civilization did and made it better. The Romans were more powerful than the Greeks. The Romans created civilization to what we kind of know it is today. And that's on the basis of like war, power, strategy, being better than others. And in the novel, I didn't bring this up because I wasn't sure how important it was going to be, but obviously it's important. Camp Jupiter also has a civilization of demigods that live within the camp. So they have a city there where they live. And Percy's like, oh my God, this could be like the future for me and Annabeth, blah, 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 blah. But what ends up happening is the fact that they've created this city, there is dynamics in that have shifted in the way of thinking. Whereas with the Greek camp, they're very much like living in like a country lifestyle or a very calm lifestyle. It's basically a camp. Whereas here, it really is a civilization and there becomes these levels of authority. And it's glorified so much that it's to the point they have like homeless satyrs, they have homeless ghosts wandering around the camp that are kind of just ignored and treated as a nuisance. And I'm wondering, hoping that there's going to be some sort of discussion where civilization brings levels of authority and levels of people that are better than others. I just hope that that's discussed, because it did really rub me the wrong way that there were essentially these like homeless characters that were begging for money. It made me uncomfortable. It made me uncomfortable that they were being ignored. So I hope that that's touched on in a way, or that their civilization can kind of blend both the Greek and Roman beliefs into one and have this kind of like utopia, non-utopia type of city. So yes, that's it for this vlog. I ended up really enjoying this. I hope you've been enjoying this read along. If you've read The Son of Neptune this month, please let me know what you thought. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Let me know. And if you would like to follow me on any of my other social medias, I do leave a link down below to my Goodreads, Twitter, and Instagram if you would like to follow me there. And of course, because it is the end of the vlog, please do not forget to like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell. As I tell you every time, it does wonders for my channel. It makes me feel really good. And after that, I always feel awkward and I don't know how to end these things. So I will see you next time with the Thrillathon vlog. I guess probably bye.